So, and so what we're talking about today actually has a lot to do with it, because I feel like as a church, my approach to being a pastor has pretty much always been, hey, we are in the same room and we're all growing together. I don't think I've ever felt like I've got it all together and I'm going to come and tell you how to get it together. There are areas in my life where I feel pretty good about, that I'm doing pretty well, and you would do well to pattern your life after me in some of those areas. And then there's other areas where I'm like, good God, you ought to search for another model, because I'm not doing really well here. But I feel like the job of a pastor is to study what God says and to bring that to the church and say, let's grow together, right? And so these last couple of weeks we've been talking about something from Ephesians chapter 4, verse 31, 32, that in my life right now is like a cutting-edge growing point. And I feel like it's been kind of fun because I've heard some of you talking, I've talked with some of you, it's like we've kind of been growing together in this. And so I think that's the thing I've loved, and I love the most about Church 180, is that we're just an honest group of people, and we're really doing our best to chase hard after God and grow, and we're not playing games, and we're not pretentious, we're just honest, and we're seeking God. And so I like that. I love that about this church, and it's been an incredible experience. So I'm not sure where the announcement ended and the sermon started, but it just happened in there somewhere. So let me do this. Let's look at the verse that we've been looking at for the last couple of weeks, just to kind of bring us back up to speed. This is St. Paul is writing a letter to a small group of people in a city called Ephesus, and it's in the 1st century AD, but the words are still really, really helpful and insightful. He says this: get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, and slander, as well as all types of evil behavior. Now, let's just be really honest. You don't need to raise your hand or indicate in any way. You can plead the Fifth Amendment here. But have any of you experienced any of these things in this last week? Yeah? So moment of confession, when Sherry sent me to Walmart for the 3rd time in one day, I actually did experience some of those things, right? That's a little bit of a joke. But the truth is that these are things that, if we're honest, most of us probably experience once or twice a week, or more, depending on where you're at in your life. And so Paul's looking at us and saying, look, in your life, anger, rage, harsh words, bitterness, slander, these are things that you ought to be getting rid of, cleaning them out of your garage, cleaning them out of your life. Don't have these things in your life. Get rid of them. And so I think particularly in this stretch of the year, this holiday season, these things are, they're highlighted a little bit, aren't they? Like in the waiting line at, does anybody do Black Friday shopping? Did anybody do that? No. Yeah. God bless, like that is, I can't even imagine all of the craziness that happens at Walmart, or Walmart typically seems to be the worst place, but like bitterness and rage and anger and harsh words, all that stuff happens. So St. Paul comes along and says, look, that stuff you ought to be getting rid of that. And instead, what you ought to be doing is you ought to be kind to one another. You ought to be tender-hearted. So tender-hearted simply means compassionate, right? So rather than looking at you with harsh words and anger and bitter, I ought to look at you with compassion. So if you're angry and mean and I let you in front of traffic and you don't even wave thanks at me, right? Rather than using harsh words, I have to be tender-hearted and say, maybe they're just really busy, or I don't know, but compassionate towards you. Paul says, be forgiving towards one another, just as God, through Christ, has forgiven you. Okay, so that's the verses that we've been talking about the last couple weeks. So earlier this summer, I saw this story. Maybe some of you saw it as well, of a truck. Did you guys see the story at all? Of a truck that got stuck on the beach. I mean, this happened at the Outer Banks, right here, just like real close to us on the Outer Banks, North Carolina. So essentially what happened was the driver said he was driving north on Route 12, and he needed to be headed south on 12. So he's headed north, realizes, oops, I'm going the wrong direction. I need to be going the other way, Route 12, I need to be going south. So he got on his GPS, and he's looking for a place to turn around his GPS, and his GPS guides him down this road. And the road actually like dead ends into the beach. So he's saying, well, I'll be able to maybe get out here and turn around the beach. Well, he doesn't, and long story short, he gets stuck on the beach. They had to call out a wrecker service, cost over $2,000 to get him unstuck, right? In addition to the fact that there's got to be like truck drivers, these guys are professional drivers, right? They drive miles and miles and miles. There's a little bit of pride. Like he's one of very few who's got his truck stuck on the beach. That's the thing, right? Like you don't want to be that guy, and yet he did. People taking pictures, it went viral, it's crazy. So the guy who got him unstuck had some things to say about this whole experience. He said, actually this happens. It's not an uncommon occurrence. It is uncommon that a truck, an 18-wheeler gets stuck, but it's not uncommon that cars get unstuck. And he said, but here's the crazy thing. He said, there are instructions about what lies ahead, but this is what the guy who owns the wrecker service, who got him unstuck, said. He said, but people don't follow signs. They keep going. They just keep going. Like, if you keep going, you're going to get stuck. If you keep going, you're going to end up on the beach. If you keep going, you're going to end up in sand. They have instructions like if you keep going, you ought to deflate your tires to a certain amount. They have all kinds of warning instructions. And this wrecker owner says, people just ignore the signs. And they end up stuck. So, I want to just have this conversation with you. And if you would allow me, I want to act like kind of what we did last week, right? Like you sit down across the table from me and we're talking and you tell me your story and you say, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm just bitter about something or someone in my life. And I just would want to say to you, look, if you're not careful, you're going to get stuck. You're going to end up stuck. And here's the thing. There's all kinds of signs along the way telling you, caution, if you keep this up, you're going to get stuck. Be careful if you keep fostering bitterness, if you keep holding a grudge, if you keep living angry, if you keep throwing out harsh words, you're going to get stuck. Now, and I know this, there are lots of signs along the way, right? Warning us about danger. You don't even have to open up the Bible to find those warning signs. Get on Google. Google, what happens if I live angry? Get on Google and do a quick search about the results of unforgiveness. Get on Google and check out results for living with bitterness or the constant use of harsh words and just see what you find. It's going to kind of line up with the teachings of Scripture. Now, the crazy thing to me about this story was that as this truck driver's driving along, he's following his GPS, and it feels right. It feels like he's going in the right direction, right? It feels like he's going in the right direction. It feels like, and I think the similarity is there. We talked about this a little bit last week. Sometimes it feels right to be angry. Sometimes it feels right to use harsh words to speak against someone. Sometimes it feels right to hold a grudge. Sometimes it can actually feel kind of good to say something harsh, can it? Yeah? I mean, maybe I'm the only one. That's weird. But sometimes it can. But here's the thing. There's a verse that kind of informs our thinking on this, and that is this. It's found in Proverbs. It says this. There is a path before each person that, say it with me, seems right, but it ends in death. Now, I would bet that there's more than one person sitting in this room. You may be here this morning, and you're sitting here, and you're like, man, this anger that I'm holding on to, they took something from me, that person lied about me, they betrayed me, they did whatever, and it feels right. Like, my GPS is saying it is right to be angry. My inner GPS is saying bitterness and harsh words, they deserve that. It feels right. I'm just going to tell you, if you start paying attention to the signs and the markers along the way, anger, bitterness, harsh words, it's going to get you stuck. It's going to get you stuck. So St. Paul teaches, and our experience confirms, all kinds of extra biblical research confirms it as well, that it is way better to get rid of anger. It is way better to get rid of all these anger and harsh words and grudges and bitterness. It's better to get rid of them than to ignore them and get stuck. So, if you're the angry one in the room, let me ask you this question. Do you like living with anger? Do you like how it feels to be bitter? Do you like how it feels to use harsh words or to live with that harsh edge? Does it feel good? Do you like holding on to it? So again, I'm thinking through this and I'm thinking like holding on to anger or holding on to bitterness. I think it's a lot like this. So what is this guy getting ready to do? Like what's the word that comes to mind? Shoot. You ever try to hold a sneeze? So, like, two things happen when you hold a sneeze. It's going to come out, and if you try to hold it too much, it's going to get ugly and gross, right? So I read a story. This is on CNN. They did an article about some guy who actually tried to hold a sneeze. He actually ended up tearing a hole in his throat. He's like, look, and he wanted to hold a sneeze because he's like, I don't want to let it out here, and so I'm just going to hold it in. So he tried to hold. He actually ended up tearing a hole in his throat. So let me just read to you from this article. So when you sneeze, it's your body's protective reflex to get rid of an irritant that has gotten into your nose. With a sneeze, a significant amount of air pressure builds up in the lungs, forces its way through the nasal cavity to get rid of that irritant. This is amazing. A sneeze can propel mucus droplets, gross, at a rate of 100 miles an hour. I mean, you're blowing boogers at 100 miles an hour. That's amazing. If you hold a sneeze back, that pressurized air will go somewhere else. In this case, it injured the tissue in the man's throat. In past cases, doctors have seen a stifled sneeze cause sinus problems, middle and inner ear damage, ear infections, and a ruptured eardrum. Now that's the physical result of holding a sneeze. Some things you just got to get rid of. And I think holding anger and bitterness and holding a grudge and living with that harshness in your heart is so much like holding a sneeze. It's going to come out. It's going to leak. And the longer you hold it in, the more damage it's going to do. Some of you, I would venture to say, have held on to anger and bitterness and harshness for a really long time. And all I want to say to you is what Paul is saying to you through Scripture, through the Spirit of God. Get rid of it. It's going to destroy you. Get rid of it. God is calling you, God is calling us to move away from anger, to move away from bitterness, to step into kindness, to step into compassion, to be men and women who forgive as we've been forgiven. So, this week, Sherry and I, we watched the movie Christopher Robin. Has anyone seen that? That is a great movie, right? It's actually a really good movie. And it's a story about, you remember Christopher Robin. He's a little kid and he plays all these stuffed animals. Well, this is a story where he grows up and he becomes an adult, and I'm not going to ruin the movie for you, but he becomes an adult and his life becomes consumed with all the busyness of life, and his things are starting to fall apart for him. And his friends, his little stuffed friends become real and they rescue him. It's a great story, right? But Pooh has a great quote. And I've never quoted Pooh in a sermon, so this is the first one. It's funny to say, Pooh. All right, here we go. This is what Pooh says, and I as soon as he said it, I stopped the movie and I'm like, that's so good, I'm going to say it on Sunday. Here we go. A quote from Pooh. I always get to where I'm going by walking away from where I've been. That's really good, isn't it? Now, you have lived in anger. Not all of you. Remember, I'm talking to you, the person who has really struggled with anger or bitterness, and it felt right, and it feels justified at points to be anger and bitter and hold a grudge. listen, you've held on to that for so long, and I'm telling you, you're ignoring the signs, and it is going to blow a hole in your throat. It's going to hurt. It's going to mess you up. You got to get away from it. You say, how do I start? Well, do you want to live like that? Do you like living with that anger and all that stuff inside? Who has some good advice, right? I always get to where I'm going. I want to be better. I want to be a man or a woman of kindness and forgiveness and compassion. I want love. I want grace and goodness to mark my life. I always get to where I'm going by walking away from where I've been. Thank you, Pooh. So, this week, the Pew Research, that's funny, Pooh and Pew, that's great. The Pew Research Center released some new research this week. They asked this question. Have you guys seen, they asked the question, what makes life meaningful? Anybody see that research this week? What makes life meaningful? And they conducted this research in a couple of different ways, but in both ways that they presented it, the answer came back consistently and clearly. The thing that makes life most meaningful, and this transcended age, this transcended gender, this transcended race. Like everybody essentially said, the overwhelming majority of people said, the thing that makes life most meaningful is, you guys know what it is? Family. Like that's what makes my life most meaningful, is family. Like 70% of the respondents, essentially 70% said family makes life most meaningful. Now here's the thing about family. Family will always be the most. Can you just say it like the most? Say it with me. The most. Family will always be the most helpful or hurtful. Isn't it true? Like, family can say things that stay with you forever. I mean, they can say things that scar you deeper than anyone in the world. Or they can say things that will lift you higher than all of your haters' comments, right? Family will always be the most helpful or hurtful. There's a proverb that says that the tongue can bring life or death. And I would say that's really true when that tongue is connected to a family member. So I'm thinking about anger and harshness and rage and bitterness and unforgiveness. And I'm thinking that when that comes from a family member, or when that's directed to a family member, that can just destroy you. As opposed to kindness and love and compassion and forgiveness that comes from a family member or that goes towards a family member. And particularly as we go into this holiday season where we're going to be seeing family. I mean, we're a couple days out of Thanksgiving, and I've already heard several different stories about people who can't stand family. And I'm like, what would happen if you and me, what would happen if we decided, you and I decided that we're going to be different? Like, as a son of God, as a daughter of God, I'm not going to be the angry, I'm not going to be the hostile, I'm not going to be the harsh words person this year. I'm going to do it different this year. I'm going to be the one in my family who speaks words of life, kindness, forgiveness, compassion. So there's 3 scriptures I just want to show you that will kind of shape and help us understand the power of our words and our actions with regards to kindness and love and forgiveness. Right? This is from Proverbs 11:17. Sorry. It says, those who are kind, what happens? Benefit themselves. But the cruel bring ruin on themselves. Now, some of you may have had the misfortune to be at a family reunion this week with some people who were cruel. They were angry. They had harsh, negative words about everything. They were bitter. They complained about everything. They were just blah. And in your mind, you were thinking, I can't wait to get out of here. We're not doing this for Christmas, are we? Right? Because the cruel bring ruin on themselves. The cruel, the angry, the harsh, the bitter, the mean. No one wants to be around those people. But the kind, they benefit themselves. Right? I just want to say to you, will you choose to be kind? And I'm going to show you how in just a minute. I'm going to give you a couple ideas in a minute. But just, will you make this decision to not be the cruel, angry, hostile, harsh word person, but to be the kind? Because there's benefit in it for you as well. And then how about this from Proverbs chapter 12, verse 25. It says, anxiety weighs down the heart, but, say it with me please, a kind word cheers it up. I would guarantee that in your family gatherings, and perhaps even in your immediate family, your home that you live in, the people with whom you live, there's all kinds of things that they're dealing with. There's anxieties, there's pressures, there's stresses. You know what's not helpful in those environments? And I'm learning this, right? A harsh word. Harsh words never help anxiety, do they? Can I get a witness? Harsh words never help anyone feel better. Angry words never help anyone feel better. Words spoken in rage never make the situation better. They always increase the tension. They always increase the anxiety. What would happen in this holiday season if you made a decision empowered by God to be the one who speaks the kind word? To be the one who says the kind, the gracious, the loving thing, the encouraging word. I'd be surprised what happens in the home environment. So then there's another verse I want to share with you. Our family we memorized this verse and we say it all the time to each other. It's from 1 Thessalonians 5:11. Encourage one another and build each other up. We say it with me? It'd feel like a family reunion if we said it, right? Encourage one another and build each other up. Man, can you imagine if every single one of us in this room made that commitment that this season, rather than being the angry, the harsh, the guy that's filled with rage, the guy that's critical and complaining all the time, I'm going to be the person who walks into the room and I'm going to speak words of life and I'm going to encourage and I'm going to build up. Because that's what God did for me. And now I'm going to pass it on. And so, if you're holding on to anger and bitterness and rage, and it feels right, it feels just to hang on to that anger because someone did do you wrong, someone did betray you, someone did lie about you, and your anger feels justified. Can I just encourage you to get rid of that, to get unstuck, to stop holding that in, and to be the one who is instead speaking words of life, encouraging, kind, and forgiving. So, I'm really, like a huge growth point in my life right now is this stuff that we're talking about. Because by nature, I tend to be impatient. By nature, so it's kind of like looking at my journal. So by nature, I tend to be impatient. By nature, I tend to be a bit harsh. By nature, I tend to be a bit edgy. And that's highlighted by the fact that my kids are becoming teenagers. You know what I'm saying? And I don't mean to be critical. I'm just saying, like, the older kids get, the more I realize, I don't like that music. Right? The older my kids get, the more I'm like, why are you wearing those clothes? And before long, I realized, my God, I've become an old curmudgeon who's not kind, who's not encouraging, who's not helpful. The Spirit of God has been like, man, you can't live like this. That's not how I am towards you. That's not how you ought to be towards your children. That's not how you ought to be towards your neighbor. That's not how you ought to be towards anyone, as a matter of fact. Kindness, courage, etc., okay? So, God is really working this over in me. And so, from time to time, we'll have this in our house. It'll happen like this. I'll start to say something, and then stop. And my girls will say, what were you going to say? Or they'll say, I know what you were going to say. Right? Have you had that happen? I mean, you start to say, like, what? And the Spirit of God's like, don't say it, shut it down. So you shut it down. So here's the lesson that God is really pushing on me. I just want to share it with you. It's a question. Wouldn't it be better to make them wonder what I was going to say rather than recover from what I said? As a man of God, as a lady of God, as a follower of Jesus Christ, wouldn't it be better to make them wonder what I was going to say? I would rather my kids say, I know what you're going to say, than to have a tear in their eye because I said it. I would rather you as my friend wonder what I was going to say, or even think you have a clue about what I was going to say, than to have a hurt heart because I went ahead and said it. Wouldn't it be better to make them wonder what you were going to say rather than recover what you said? So, how do we move then from the attitude of destructiveness and bitterness and anger and rage into kindness and compassion and forgiveness and encouragement? St. Paul, in this letter to the Ephesians, gives 3 verses, and I'm just going to give them to you. I'm not going to talk a lot about them. I just want to kind of give them to you. And I want to really encourage you this week. I'm going to be posting them on social media, and I want you to kind of take these things and dig into them and pray about them and ask God to apply them to your life. Okay, so let me just give them to you. This is what St. Paul says in Ephesians 4:29. Don't use foul or abusive language. Let everything you say be good and helpful, so that your words will be an encouragement to those who hear them. So, let me just kind of flesh this out just a little bit. Can I just encourage you, don't take the cheap shot. You know what I mean? Sometimes, somebody will do something that's kind of silly. And everyone around sees it, and there's always somebody that takes the cheap shot. You know what I'm saying? They crack the easy joke. And everybody knows it, but there's always the guy who says it. Can I say, don't be that guy. Don't take the cheap shot. Listen, if you're taking a cheap shot, you're a cheap person. Right? Don't take the cheap shot. What would happen if instead you bypassed the cheap shot and instead made an investment into other people with your words? Just think about, how many times have you cracked a joke at someone's expense, as opposed to how many times have you spoken encouragement into someone's life? Right? There's all kinds of jokers. There's all kinds of people willing to take a cheap shot. There's all kinds of people willing to make a meme out of your weakness. Don't be that guy. Be the man who takes the high road. Be the woman who takes the high road. You know why? Because God did that for you. God did not look at you and point out all of your weaknesses. God did not look at you and point out all of your inefficiencies. God did not look at you and make fun of you. God did not look at you and dismiss you. Instead, God forgave you. God was kind to you. God loved you. And now he says, hey gang, you're part of my family. That's how we do it in my family. Don't use foul or abusive language to tear people down. Let everything you say be good and helpful. So I just really encourage you, this month, really begin to focus on watching the words you use. Change your words so that they're not destructive, but instead they're kind and encouraging. And then, Paul says this. Be kind to each other, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, just as God through Christ has forgiven you. And then he says this. Read this with me, please. Imitate God, therefore, in everything you do, because you are his dear children. Remember what the Pew Research showed? People find most meaning in life from and through their family. Some of you grew up in families that were dysfunctional. They were angry, they were bitter, they were hostile. Harsh words were common. God says, hey, guess what? Now you're in a new family. I'm your father, Luke. I'm your father, right? And you are my, say it, dear children. And I love you. And I'm kind towards you. And I'm encouraging and I affirm you and I embrace you. And sometimes I have to say hard things to you because you're out of line, and so I'll say hard things to you, but I'll not humiliate you with my hard words. So be kind to one another. And in the family of God, gang, this is how we conduct ourselves toward one another. We do it because our Father is kind to us, so we're kind to one another. So Paul says, look, don't tear people apart with your words. Don't use foul or abusive language. Be mindful of the fact that in this family, because our Father is kind to us, we're kind to one another. And finally he says, look, how about this? Carefully, that's what he says, Ephesians 5:10. Carefully determine what pleases the Lord. Carefully determine what pleases the Lord. Can I just throw this out there? It's amazing what happens when you carve out some time on a regular basis to think about your life in the presence of God. It's amazing what happens when you turn things off, when you turn off the podcast, when you shut down Netflix, when you flip off your phone, and you think about your life in the presence of God. And it's in those moments that he begins to say things like, hey, Paul, you realize you're not really kind. Now, hopefully he doesn't talk to you about me, right? Hopefully he'll just talk to you about you. But, right, in those moments when you're considering your life before God, and you're asking him, like, God, like, how am I doing here? Like, are there things that I need to work on? Those things will begin to come to mind. And so Paul says, listen, carefully and thoughtfully determine what pleases the Lord. All right, God, so you're pointing out to me that I'm becoming aware of the fact that I do have a tendency towards anger and towards harsh words, and that's not what you want. You want me to get rid of that? You instead want me to be kind and compassionate, forgiving. So how can I do that? And that's the question that you and God have to answer. I can't answer that for you. I'm answering it for myself. I can't answer it for you. But if you answer that, and you begin to kick anger and bitterness and harshness out of your life, you will save yourself. You will invest in others. Your relationships will change. Your physical, emotional, mental, spiritual well-being will be enhanced by this singular decision. And so I want to leave you with this question. And I ask, if I could be so presumptuous, that you would contemplate this question with me. Wouldn't it be better to make them wonder what I was going to say rather than recover from what I said? Wouldn't it be better to make them wonder what I was going to say rather than recover from what I said? Now look, I want to do this. Some of you have things in your life that you're angry about, and it makes sense that you're angry. You have indeed been violated, and you've been betrayed. I'm just going to tell you, holding on to that is going to wreck you, and it won't destroy the other person, it'll destroy you. And you absolutely do need some kind of a miracle to break the hold of that anger in your life. So I'm going to do this morning. I just want to pray for you, and we're not going to hang out, I don't think, too terribly long, but